And now I do not want to talk too much because our speaker needs his time.
Yes.
And so please welcome to the stage Benjamin Kott.
Thank you. So for those who are not aware of who I am, it's not important, but I'm currently developer advocate at the Tapestry GmbH. Did in the past a lot of consultant work, also UI UX lead for the core, and you can reach me at Benjamin Kott on Twitter, and that's my email address. Just to clarify up front, who thinks this is about Fluid best practices? You're wrong. This will not be about how to build effectively or efficient templates. It's about how the template engine itself is integrated in the core. Yeah. So just to manage expectations here. So I start with a warning. There will be code, a lot of code. I will speak fast. It will be recorded. Questions, please, at the end, because we need the time to go through all of the kind of stuff. So I got quite a short agenda. So I think we need to shortly define what a template engine is. We got some examples. We will talk about portability, integration, and just for fun, we will implement Twig and Tapestry. Then we will summarize that, and then you got time for questions. Okay? Cool. I copied this from Wikipedia, so because I'm a lazy developer. So a template engine is software designed to combine templates with a data model to produce result documents. The language that the templates are written in is known as template language or templating language. A template engine is ordinarily included as part of a web template system or application framework and may be used also as processor or filter. This is important because we will hear this kind of words later on. And it will also make a point what we will talk about. So, but that's not important. So we do now a bit of Q&A. Who has ever seen that kind of template, and can we tell what template language that is? Any guesses? Okay, first false answers. What language it is? Yes, it is Blade. So there is not only Twig in the world, except from Fluid, there are existing other languages, and I've marked them accordingly. So I guess this one is green, that could be Twig, and that one is orange, so we're obviously talking about Fluid. It's every time the same functionality. As you see, they do not much differentiate from each other. I expect Blade has these add for each stuff. Twig, I don't know. For each loops are still, from my head, a mess because they are completely in the wrong order as you define them. And then we have Fluid, as you probably all know it. Just so you can see just what we're talking about, this is Blade, the template engine of Laravel. We got Twig with this funny little thingy. That's the templating engine mostly used in Symfony or Drupal, or as many of you are requesting from Pattern Lab, and we obviously got Tapestry. And we now start with a bit of an imagination session. And we now start to imagine, what if Tapestry would use Twig? Imagine you could now share templates between your Pattern Lab, Symfony, Drupal, and Tapestry. Wouldn't that be great? Who thinks that is a good idea? Okay, cool. And who thinks this will just work? Okay, good, because it doesn't. Your favorite template engine is not as portable as you may think. That means if you cannot reuse your Pattern Lab templates in Drupal or Symfony, because every system flavors the engine itself with system-specific functions. And that's quite a lot. So if we now take a look at what's... Okay, I thought I wasn't that important, so I just hide behind that thingy. Okay, if we can now just a quick overview of what we're talking about. So we're taking Twig for this example. So this is what Twig actually supports out of the box. Yeah, that are specific tags, filters, functions, and tasks. It's not important what's on there, it's just about the amount. And now if we take a look at what Symfony implements in addition at this kind of stuff. So they got also new tags for forms, translations, filters, functions, and additional audio is gone, or maybe I don't know why. And we now take a look at Drupal, and as you can see, there's a lot of stuff missing. Yeah? It's just to make the point that you cannot reuse your Symfony templates within Drupal, because, well, basically, most of the stuff is just missing. Yeah? That means that Symfony Twig is not equals Drupal Twig. Yeah? And that stands for everything. For Pattern Lab, for everything you can imagine, they are not out of the box compatible. That means you can also not reuse your templates without adjustments. And that's what we're talking about. This talk was initiated when we were asked, okay, how we can use our Pattern Lab templates within TYPO3. The problem is, well, the people don't want to adjust the templates. They want to just take them, put them in, and then want them to work. And this will not happen and cannot happen with any flavored template engine on the market. There are examples where that could work. For example, what was it? JavaScript world, lots of curly braces, forgot the name, I don't know. There are examples that cannot be flavored that would work, but you have actually no additional functionality. So that means you cannot use your templates outside the system they have been built for. Flavored, necessary extensions are destroying portability. Yeah? To give you an imagination what that could be, well, basically text formatting, date strings, forms, links, images, media, everything. Yeah? So it gets really complicated. So just this as upfront clarifications, so you will understand what we will do next. We will now have a look into how Tapestry actually renders content. And most of you are probably aware of this short example. So we define a new text on a page object and just put out some hello world, right? And what you probably mostly use is some kind of this stuff where you use a Fluid template. And also, if most people only use this to define the content elements, well, it's actually just an inheritance of Fluid template again. So we're talking about C objects here. And a C object is just a TypoScript extension that can be registered. And we can look in the front-end extension of Tapestry how this is being done. You would just see Tapestry converts front-end content objects and then see Fluid template. This is a tag you will use in your TypoScript, and you can register whatever you want. And you register a new class that is going to render this. And if we now just jump into this class for a moment, this was asking you to come up front to see a bit more. They always have a render function. And the important part of the render function, well, for Fluid template is basically, okay, we initialize a new view and render that view. That just returns in the end to whatever you do, just return a string. Yeah, this is how C objects work in the end. For XBase, we got something similar, but most people are not aware of when they think, okay, XBase and Fluid is tightly connected. The interesting fact is that the default views of XBase actually consist of an empty view, and JSON view, and a not found view. There is no Fluid view. XBase does not ship one because it's completely decoupled and it does not need a Fluid view. But what XBase does by default, it uses a Fluid view in the action controller you're always extending. As you can see, you can now see here that we define a default view object name. You probably overwritten. When you try to build a JSON view or something else, this is the only part where Fluid is initiated. Everything else, you can register whatever you want in there. You just need to implement the according interface. Now that means we have some controller context, some assignments for variables, some render function, and an initialize view function for additional stuff. Now that means as you may have seen, you can change the default view for your controllers in XSpace basically everywhere, except on global scope, and that's a good thing. Yeah? That means every controller you want to have rendered something different, you need explicitly to override that kind of stuff. Otherwise, it would mostly just break functionality, because the extensions are not built for being handled with different templates mostly. So, and yeah, as you can see, this is what you normally would do. You got some controller, and you say here, okay, my default view object name for the controller is JSON view. This is how you, if you've seen Suzy's and Arthur's talk, you've seen how they built some JSON output for the frontend in general. Yeah, you can extend it for your own extensions to any view as you want, as long as you implement the view interface. That's important for what we will do next, basically. Everyone else who is not using XSpace or TypoScript is basically on its own. As we heard Frank and Andreas this morning, yes, you can build any PI-based or abstract plugin controller, or just use a PSP function. Doesn't matter as long as you just return a string at the end, right? So, and since we, I'm actually good in time. And since we now want to have some fun, I try to explain you how we actually add Twig to the Tapestry stack and what's necessary to be done. Yeah, so we will really looking into code now. So there are a few steps that we need to do that are actually mixed up. So we need to register a new C object for TypoScript usage. We'll build a new standalone view to be implemented in abstract plugin or somewhere else. We build a new XSpace view. We will implement Twig itself. We need to rebuild everything from the ground up because there is nothing existing where we can build upon. So, and we were starting off, as you've seen this before, but we now exchange just Twig template, Fluid template with Twig template. So we can now use it in our TypoScript. So, sorry, my syntax highlighting is now broken because it doesn't know about Twig template yet. It only knows Twig template, but that doesn't matter. It's otherwise the same configuration as it would be used to use with Fluid. And this is intentional, to be compatible, exchangeable, and all that kind of stuff. But as some of you, well, that's Twig template, may know, Twig is really unaware of what partials could be, what templates could be. It has no clue about all that kind of stuff. So we will get into this a bit later, because we need to teach Twig how to basically, yeah, work with this around. So the next one we will do, we will create a new the class for the content object, so we can just use. It will not work in this current state. This is why I try to, well, you need to actually do multiple steps at once, so it's not that easy. So we will, for now, just create the new content object and let it fail. Yeah, but we also want to have a view at some point to be more easy. We want to have a standalone view somewhere in the end. As you can see, we already defined the namespace and the use statements for that. Namespace not, I skipped that. But in the end, we will render something and just return a string, right? And to be more, to make more use of our view that we will now create, I decided to go for a new abstract view that actually implementing the same signature as the current Fluid template does. So it's more compatible, more easy to maintain, all that kind of stuff. So we get assign multiple, can render, get controller context. We also set formats. We got partial layout, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And in comparison, this is what the view interface would have defined. That's a grayed out area, and everything else we need to build new. Because also the view interface itself doesn't need this kind of stuff. Yeah? Everyone can still follow me a bit? Okay, I will try to continue and clear up questions later. So this is our new, oh, it's so small here. This is our new standalone view. As you can see, it's extending the abstract view we did, and we're currently here adding additional stuff explicitly necessary for usage in TypoScript. Because in contrast to the XSpace usage, for most of the functionality we have in Tapestry for rendering links, getting translations and all that kind of stuff, we need a controller context or rendering context. Since TypoScript doesn't give us one, well, welcome, we will build us our own. That basically means we will pull up the current configuration manager interface, build up a new content object renderer, setting the current content object to the view itself to be used on later. We will take the web request we currently have, enhance it so URIs can be built later on. We will pre-configure the URI builder, so the URI builder also has an idea where we're currently in the system, and we get the controller context we just built and assign it later on. So our new Twig functionality can actually work at some place. For XSpace, this is quite simpler. What for XSpace we need to do, well, we already have a controller context. The problem is, I don't know why, it's currently be set in the canRender function, and basically the function that should decide if the current view could render this template or not is also currently a Fluid template, well, responsible for setting controller context, the format, and passing the template name. And all the magic currently happening, you know, from your auto-resolving for your action, controller, template pass, whatever. Well, it's basically, it's a control name and with a slash, and you see first get controller action name. So that's it. That's all the magic currently happening in the core. Whoever wondered how the core might do this. So not really, well, complicated if you once figured out how this shit works. The next thing, we are still at a point where we see some kind of Twig environment. Because as we studied the Twig interfaces, we will now see, okay, this will only probably work if we build the cache. So what we will do, we will build a new, we have a look at the Twig cache interface and need to build that before. That basically means we have the Twig cache interface defines a generate key, a write, a load, and a get timestamp method. So who is familiar with the caching framework? We now got two problems. The first one is the load function. The second one is the get timestamp function. Because the timestamp function in Twig itself returns the age of the generated file that's been cached on the disk. And the load string actually, well, has no return value defined. That's a problem because Twig thinks you need to require once the cache template file. That leaves little options for us. So we can just go into the file system cache of the Twig code, and as you can see, the load function basically does a file exist on some template and then include it once. And get timestamp does the same, and yeah, does the file exist? And if it does not exist, well, it returns a 0, and everything else we get the file time currently. Yeah. So our caching framework is, well, not able of the second, but we can at least load it automatically. But this will limit us to, we will need to build a new cache configuration for all that kind of stuff. And the only option we have for, well, requiring files through the caching framework, since we want to utilize that and not build our own cache again and use TYPO3 for that, we only have the file backend available and the PHP frontend for that. So every other variation of caching configuration is basically off the table. So as you can see, we now build our Twig cache. I shortened a bit to the important parts. Well, writing stuff is it's basically as you ever would use the caching framework. but the load function fetches the required ones if the cache exists on the plate. And the second one is a bit more tricky. It looks like simple, but the caching backend itself, or the cache itself, does not give us an age for the cache that we need to for comparisons later if the template needs to be recompiled or not. So, well, we will just guess how the folder structure will look like after we have had a look how the caching framework actually presses files into storage. Yeah, so we got we get the cache backend, get the cache directory, put in the key, and obviously it's a PHP frontend, so the file ending is .php. Yeah. And still, we are not able to boot an environment. What we are now missing is the loader. So loader is responsible for basically, well, how templates are resolved, where templates are stored, and all that kind of stuff. And I will explain you what would be necessary to make Twig more work like TYPO3. So this is what most of you have ever seen Twig that are normal extends and includes. And you can see we got two examples here, one for an extend, one for an include. And it always looks up the full file path, including the file extensions that we are not using in TYPO3. The same goes for the paths where the templates are fetched from are always in the same directory, and we have to take care about the structure itself, so there is no partials and all that kind of stuff. So we now try to streamline this so the usage is more likely what we know from TYPO3, and we still enforce our users to not include any template from anywhere. So we make use of the namespace functionality that's only available in the Twig file system loader and not available in any other loader from Twig. So even with template loading are differences in the engine itself. But that's no problem because the file system loader of Twig is widely used, and we are now going the same route and trying to match our implementation with their file system loader implementation. As you can see, we now got an add layout and an add template. So we are automatically polyfilling the paths where the templates and the layouts should be looked up. It could be more deep, but wouldn't fit on the slide, so I just tried to make it short. Then we have the next problem, we get the file extensions. So we want to get rid of these because we only want to include add layout /default. Well, it should be obviously because we already set our view what format it should resolve, and it's .twig at the end. Well, I'm lazy, I don't want to type this, and I want to more or less be more easy to migrate my current stuff if I would be into using Twig. The last step is, well, add template seems to be obvious because that's the default, so we can just skip it, right? So this is more what we know from Fluid. We got a Fluid, the layout view helper or the partial layouts, the render functions, and this is the closest we can get here without building new text in Twig. That's a whole new different level of awesomeness. So if we now have a look, okay, what is defined in the loader interface, we got the source context, we got the cache key that's implemented, that's why we needed to build the cache before, because we now need to get a cache key. And we got an isFresh function that basically decides if the template needs to be recompiled or not. And, well, basically if the template exists or not. Yeah. And again, only the Twig file system loader has support for namespaces. That means if you are used to using Twig and decide, okay, I just use an array loader or whatever they are still implementing, it will just not work. You have no namespace support, it's only in the file system loader. But no problem. We are doing similar stuff, so that should be fine. So, and we will now define our namespaces for that kind of stuff. So we got a simple constants file where we define a namespace for our layout, for our partials, and a template. And, well, I'm lazy, so this is also resulting in the lookup pass at the end. So, and if we now check the Twig loader implementation or the interface, we actually need to dynamically add passes. We need some way to find the template that we need to build. We need to get the file extensions we're currently resolving. We need to add namespaces. We need to get the paths, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So, finally, the important stuff is basically how the file system loader of Twig itself handles this also. So we got an add pass function where we, well, basically throw in where the template should be loaded from and give it a namespace. So that means this is what we later can use with the @ sign in front of all that kind of stuff. And the second one is more or less the find template function. Well, we got some utility stuff around here that's not that important. The only important part is that we are now building candidates for the file names that then will be checked, okay, if they do exist or not. Otherwise, they will fall back to the same behavior as you have in Fluid. That means if you request default a layout, it will look for default html.twig. And if it does not find that one, it will look for a default file. So we could still limit this, but I wanted to have it more closely. So, and now we are at a point where we start connecting the dots. And finally, well, the Twig environment, I missed that one. The Twig environment by default has no clue about what a controller context is. Twig itself knows some kind of context, but it's basically the values have assigned before or to the parents. So, well, I don't want to mess around with this kind of stuff, so we basically moved it, extended the Twig environment, the default one, and added a controller context so we can later on access within our extensions or filters or all that kind of stuff. So, and now finally we are back to our abstract view. What a ride, huh? So you can now see these examples are short and will not work exactly like shown on there, just to give you an idea. So in our render function, in our abstract view, we will start a new Twig loader and we'll add our predefined well, root paths, partial paths, and template root paths, and give them the according namespaces so we can access them later on. As mentioned, the namespace default or namespace template is not necessary to be mentioned because it's a default, means if I request something without a namespace, it will look in the default. Right? And we're currently only using, for simple demo purposes, the debug mode. This is important to have Twig checked if your template needs to be refreshed or not. So we are just using here, and we are assigning a Twig cache instance from the Twig cache we just built. Then we will assign the controller context we built in the views before, and then we can finally render a template name we just got in with all of our variables. So, extensions. This is a point where we just talked about in the beginning that Twig itself will not work because you cannot build links, cannot render media, and all that kind of stuff. So, well, we need to add our Tapestry Flavor to Twig, right? So the implementation currently is being built to be extendable, so you can register your own stuff. This is what you've probably seen a lot in the Tapestry context. That means we will register a new extension called CObject, debug, image, media, translate, and, well, everything else we have in stack for that. Will be called relatively easily in our construct function of the abstract view that just, well, iterates over the stuff and assigns these extensions to the environment. Well, 120 files and 5,600 lines of code later, we can translate our simple templates to Twig. Yeah? The same works for extensions. This is a vacancy extension, very little one without any benefits. We now can also assign our Twig view here, and you see, well, it's the same shit, just different formatted. Yeah? The conclusion. The learnings we had. Any template engine is possible to be integrated in Tapestry. We can use multiple template engines at once, and it's easy to implement yourself. The yourself is important. Yeah? Because if you want to use that kind of stuff, it needs to be maintained. To give you an estimation, to do all the research for the talks, it was 4 weeks of full-time work. To get everything running, connected the dots, rebuild everything, the view helpers, everything needs to be rebuilt, tested, and that kind of stuff. This is a shit amount of work. Huh? So, lines of code, I just mentioned it. That might seem low. The problem is you need to figure out how it works. You need to understand Tapestry in full detail, and you need to understand Twig in full detail with every problem it can have. We can still, if you don't believe me that it's working, I can show you. There are also Twig extensions available in TER. If you're into this, you can use them. They got some drawbacks, so I decided to build it from scratch. Because, for example, extensions are hard-coded. So, well, doesn't help us much. So, 32 minutes should be good, faster than expected. But since we got some time, this is actually the project I'm building on. And I will just show you around a bit of what's going on inside. It's cool for you? Interesting? Cool. What? Packages. Yes. I need a house. Yes. You want to sponsor my house? I maybe put it on packages. We can discuss this, no problem. So as you can see, well, the code actually is a bit bigger than actually imagined. As you can see, I'm strictly checking for the right implementations of the cache interfaces and all that kind of stuff. Also, the key generation is in here. Well, writing is actually pretty easy, except, well, you need to remove some stuff from the Twig generated cache to be working and to be included later without any problems. And yeah, it's just different formatted. So the interesting part is now in the extensions. So if we take an easy one, that one. Yeah, this is a typical Twig extension. Well, Twig is not as sexy as Fluid, for example, because it hardly decides or differentiates between functions and filters, even if they're doing the same. So you basically, well, need to register your functions, and this point, okay, even the translate function with all the specialities they have, I decide, okay, I make it safe to return HTML because people do that kind of stuff, and I literally did not plan to release it yet, so I can still decide on this. So it needs a context. This is what we currently defined before. That is not suitable for us, but it also needs an environment. So, and who is used to, well, we come to that point later. But still now, the environment has our controller context, and it can actually resolve the current scope of where we are moving into. Means extension name, whatever, and we don't need to pass this to our translation filter. So it takes in the same arguments as as the view helper would do, but it's not as convenient as, well, as registering a new argument through PHP. You need to line them up everything within this execute function. Otherwise, it will just not work. This sounds easy to maintain for short versions, but have you ever seen how much properties the image view helper has? So, well, that's not fun. So it was really hard to, well, as you see, my comments, where I was taking them from, and what is actually being said. And, well, as you can see, I've defined here a set tag attribute. Interesting, Twig does not have a tag builder like Tapestry does. Yes, there is no tag builder. If you want to be an HTML element, you do basically, well, you write your HTML element. And have to check everything within the templates. But if you want to have a tag builder, well, I copied the one from Fluid, working pretty fine, saved me a lot of time. Otherwise, it's more or less the same code as you will find in the view helpers. It doesn't matter. It's just copy, paste, and building the execute functions. As soon as you get everything else working, like controller context, and, well, did not forget any variables or to pass to the function. So, and that's pretty obvious. So I started for testing this. I got a build folder, and my build folder does more. It contains more extensions, right? Because this is what you do. So this is my page template. As you can see, well, I copy-pasted just the dynamic content stuff. This is what you get used to, but, well, also page resolving, everything works as expected because we're just mapping all the functionality we had in Fluid template and moved it to Twig template. That also means data processing, everything is cool, just works. So that's it. And even, well, I grabbed some simple extension I had lying around. Well, not sure if everything is still up to date, but we will now include the XSpace view we just built. And as soon as we did this, I let the old template lying around for content elements and for lists and show actions. Maybe we go into the list view. That's you can also see how URIs are being built. So, well, it comes with, yes, this is how you would pass arguments to a function. Not sure if I have filters for mod HTML. We need to rebuild this. So also Twig is aware how we want to have links in our content elements and all that kind of stuff. We need to put it through our HTML parser. Yeah, that's how it's being done. Filters, well, yeah, nothing really special. It's not complicated, just a huge amount of work. And the question still is, well, I'm not decided if I will release it or not, or throw it away, is as soon as we, well, release a second templating engine, we got a new problem in the Tapestry ecosystem. That's named fragmentation. That means you do not know anymore if you can override the extensions or in what templating engines they need to be overwritten, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure if I would allow this. It's possible, so this is why I said you can build it your own, or buy me a house, so I can give it to you. Yeah. So that's basically it from my side. I can chat with you later if you want to see more details and also the stripped away code. For example, Twig needs to have all templates in reverse order to resolve them correctly, so I just removed it from the examples to be more fitting to the screen. Questions? Yes, Ikea. Why? Oh, well, I like challenges. People always tell me it cannot be done, or they need huge amount of work and workforces and sponsoring and trillions of euros and whatever time. And I said, I will not believe this. So I started proving them wrong, basically. And basically, it was a session request for developer days that were asking, how do I get my pattern lab templates into Tapestry? I said, oh no, not again. I will not answer that question, but I will show you how to implement Twig in Tapestry. So you can fiddle around with it. Because as soon as we answer the question how we can, well, reuse the pattern lab templates in Tapestry, someone will come around with a new crazy shit. And, well, it will just not end. And the question is, to what extent the core needs to support all that kind of stuff? Well, it needs to be open, right? It can be done without hacks, can be integrated completely clean, can be integrated to make full use of everything Tapestry has. But, well, it's up to you to, well, decide if it's worth or not, right? If it's worth, yeah.
Beside only switching the template engine, what would be the benefit? Would we gain some benefits from Twig? Is it better? What are the better part, worst part?
Well, your for each loops are in wrong order. So if you're happy with, I don't know, my item in records, so that would be a clear benefit for you. Otherwise, well, I just pulled up that screens in advance to show you Blade, Twig, and Fluid. Well, how much of a difference makes it? And the point where I described that you need to adjust your templates anyways, because you can't just use them. Well, where's the problem? You can't reuse them. Except you define reusing as, okay, I got fully working templates, and now, well, I now have to replace all the placeholder stuff we already implemented in the template, like a hash for links, and now to build in functionality. Well, it doesn't make a difference if you then use that link or that link. Mustache, for example, is not extendable. That one would work. But I had an example. I can maybe see if I find it around, if you're happy with that one. Template engines. So well, also Smarty, well, they look all the same. Mustache is very special. So that's my favorite, because formatting stuff, raw means you do 3 braces instead of 2. But only if you want to have it really raw. If you want to have it escape somehow for URLs, you do 2 braces and an end sign, whatever. So, but the benefit would be if we all would move to Mustache. You cannot extend it. That means you could use your templates everywhere, because it's not extendable. So that would be a real benefit. If you like to do it, well, I just showed you how to implement Twig. You should also implement Mustache if you would like. So, any other questions? Sure.
Did you compare compile times and render times?
No. I did. This was not a performance test. I don't know. Well, if you would like to do it and only use it for that, we can, well, build a one-to-one thing on my machine, and then we can do also compile time comparison. Yeah, and basically, I'm not a template engine specialist. I'm actually front-end developer, and I was able to do this. So, yeah, just research. More questions? Then thank you.